Yeah, so the chart you see on my screen right now is probably the biggest motivating factor I had to get back into the renewable heat sector in Ireland. So in the wind energy sector, we are global leaders in Ireland, like definitely right up there at the top table, top two or three in the world. And being part of Wind Energy Ireland over the last 4 years was just so enjoyable to experience that, like to be at the very cutting edge in terms of delivering renewable energy in a sector, in our electricity sector, was just really inspirational. But I had worked in renewable heat before I joined Renew Wind Energy Ireland, and this chart had bothered me for the all during that time. So while we're global leaders in renewable electricity, we are really poor at renewable heat. We actually have the worst share of renewable heat in Europe. And that's not just like in terms of having the lowest share, it's at a time where other countries are doing amazingly well when it comes to renewable heat. So while we're at 6% renewable heat, many of our European neighbours are at 40, 50, and Sweden, for example, is even over 60% renewable heat. And the inspiration I find in that is there are so many proven solutions that have been rapidly deployed at scale in those countries for the last 30 to 40 years that we could use here in Ireland to really improve our renewable heat share. I just felt I had to be part of that mix again, or at least I always wanted to be back in it at some point. So when I looked at what Astatine is working on and what we're doing here in Astatine in trying to roll out at scale a proven technology in the form of industrial heat pumps that many of these countries have deployed to get those very high shares of renewable heat, I just felt it was a journey I really wanted to be a part of again. So it's very much linked to the potential that I see in us really delivering at scale in the immediate years ahead this renewable heat technology to really get us off the bottom of the pile in terms of renewable heat share in Europe. The other motivating factor, of course, is probably what's motivating everyone now, which is carbon emissions. This is a chart I did a couple of years back in terms of profiling where the carbon emissions are in Ireland's society, you could say. So what you can see is the vast majority, 2/3 of our emissions are in the energy sector. And just as a rule of thumb, about a third are in electricity, a third in heat, and a third in transport within the energy sector. Now, what makes this tricky or a bit of a balancing act is even though carbon emissions can exist more in certain sectors, the solutions available mightn't be there to try and remove those emissions right now today. And a very good example of that is aviation or airplanes, for example. We have a lot of carbon emissions in aviation, but we have no proven solution to remove them. But when it comes to heat, this is back to the share of renewable heat all around Europe. We have a lot of emissions in heat. So a third of all the energy related emissions are in heat, but there are proven solutions to make a real dent in our carbon emissions in this space. And when you look at the industrial sector, there's 4 million tons of CO2 in total. And I think we could realistically make a huge dent in those emissions in the immediate years ahead, not as an ambition to deliver in 10 or 15 years time. So it's a combination of huge potential in terms of deploying renewable heat and improving that stat for Ireland, as well as a huge potential to make a large reduction in carbon emissions in the immediate future using proven technologies that we can deploy at scale. And I think while we roll out large industrial heat pumps in Ireland, it's also going to aid the rollout of smaller scale in heat pumps in time, which is a huge ambition of government to deliver for buildings, let's say at a smaller scale. And I think there's a journey there where if we can deliver for industry in the immediate future, where the economic case is so attractive, I think that will also help us deliver faster down the road for the smaller applications like our buildings. So renewable heat and a dent in carbon emissions, I suppose, were very much top of mind when I was making the transition away from the global leader of renewable electricity back to trying to move us off the bottom of the pile in renewable heat. And I believe in Astatine, we have a really good offering that can make that happen tomorrow, not years down the road.